What if everything you believed about time was wrong? What if the reason you feel constantly drained, always behind, never enough, has nothing to do with how hard you work or how disciplined you are? There's a lie, a quiet, invisible lie, one so deeply embedded in modern life that most people carry it to their graves without ever once questioning it. And this lie, it's not just stealing your energy, it's stealing your life. But here's what's strange. More than 1,000 years ago, on the other side of the world, an ancient civilization had already cracked the code. They already knew the answer. And when you hear it, nothing will look the same again. In the United States, the average person works around 150-91 hours every year. Japan's numbers climb even higher. And yet somehow, the Japanese built one of the most balanced, deeply human philosophies of life the world has ever seen. Regions like Okinawa tell a different story entirely. A story of longevity, of presence, of people who somehow figured out what the rest of the world is still desperately searching for. How? That question will change everything by the time this story ends. Researchers at Harvard followed over 4,000 adults across 15 years. The results stunned them. The most satisfied people weren't the most productive. They weren't the busiest. They were simply the ones who felt fully present in whatever they were doing. Not more time, more presence. The Japanese call this mastering time. Not filling every second, not running faster, but learning to inhabit time in a completely different way. And today you're going to follow Max, 23-year-old American, someone who looked like he had it all figured out, until one ordinary Thursday morning shattered everything he thought he knew. Chapter 1. The Trap of Busy. Max woke every day at 5:47 am, not because his body asked him to, but because he'd read somewhere that successful people rise before 6. He had color-coded lists, time blocks every 25 minutes, a meditation routine 10 minutes because he'd heard it boosted productivity, a morning run 30 minutes because focus, a precisely calculated breakfast, and by 700 am sharp he was at his desk, ready to conquer the day. From the outside, Max looked like a machine. But every night when he finally lay down, that same heavy feeling returned. That hollow whisper in his chest, you didn't do enough. It didn't matter how many tasks he'd crossed off. There was always one more. Always a version of himself just one step ahead that he could never quite reach. At 23, Max was exhausted. And the most frightening part, he had absolutely no idea why. Then came that Thursday in October. Max had a major presentation, 3 days of preparation, 6 hours of sleep per night, enough caffeine to power a small engine. He had rehearsed every line, timed every slide down to the second. But when he opened his laptop that morning, his stomach dropped. Wrong file, everything gone. He sat completely still for almost 2 minutes, just staring at the screen. Then he closed the computer, walked out of his apartment, and just started walking. No headphones, no podcast, no destination. And what happened next, what he stumbled across on that aimless walk, would quietly begin to dismantle everything he'd built his life around. Chapter 2. The secret nobody teaches you. Down a street he'd never walked before, Max passed a small, dusty bookstore, and in the window, almost hidden between old spines and worn covers, was a book with a handwritten title on a yellow slip of paper, The Time of the Samurai. He went in, he bought it. He doesn't fully know why. But the first sentence he read stopped him completely. Modern man treats time as an enemy to be defeated. The samurai treated time as a master to be respected. He read it 3 times, because that was it. That was exactly what he'd been doing. Every morning was a battle. Every day was a war against the clock. And wars, by definition, destroy the people who fight them. Then the book introduced a concept Max had never encountered. It has no direct English translation. Most people render it as space or pause, but those words don't even come close to its depth. Ma is the interval, the silence between musical notes that makes the melody possible, the space between words that allows understanding, the pause in breath that sustains life itself. For the Japanese, Ma is not the absence of something. Ma is something. And then the book said something that hit Max like a cold wave. An agenda without Ma isn't productivity. It's self-inflicted violence. Chapter 3. The first teaching. Max looked at his own schedule with fresh eyes. An endless wall of colored blocks, no real space, no genuine pause. Even his rest had a purpose: recover, recharge, then spend it all again. He wasn't resting, he was refueling a machine. Ma appears everywhere in Japanese culture. In architecture, traditional homes built around emptiness, not walls. In music, composer Teru Takemitsu used silence as an instrument. In martial arts, the most devastating strike begins not with movement but with stillness. For the samurai, Ma was survival. A warrior who couldn't inhabit the interval, who couldn't be fully present in the space between actions, was already dead. Because it was in the Ma that he observed. He breathed. He saw what his opponent was about to do before the opponent even knew it himself. Max picked up his planner, and for the first time in years, instead of filling every empty space, he protected them. But just when he thought he understood, the second teaching turned everything upside down again. Chapter 4. Ichigo Ichie. Weeks later, Max was at his neighborhood cafe, book open, coffee beside him. Then something stopped him cold. He looked down at his nearly empty cup and realized he hadn't tasted a single sip. He'd drunk it all on autopilot, his mind already 3 tasks ahead. When had he started doing this? Not just with coffee, with everything. That day he read about Ichigo Ichie, the principle that each moment, each encounter, each experience is completely singular. It will never exist again. Not as motivational decoration, but as hard, physical reality. It comes from the Japanese tea ceremony. The masters taught that each ceremony should be performed as if it were the only one in a lifetime. Every gesture deliberate, every detail honored, because that moment, truly, could never be repeated. The philosopher Senno Rikit, greatest tea master of the 16th century, told his students, "Meet each person as if this were the only possible meeting between you. Because in a way, it is." Max closed the book. He sat there quiet for a long moment. He had spent years living past the present, always mentally in the next task, the next goal, the next version of himself. And while he sprinted toward the future, the present, the only place life actually happens, slipped through his fingers like water. He ordered another coffee. This time he put down the book, set aside his phone, and drank each sip with complete, undivided attention. He said later it was the best coffee he'd ever had in his life. But the real test was still coming, because knowing these things is easy, living them, that's where it gets hard. Chapter 5, The Weight of Speed. Max started applying these principles, and immediately, something unexpected happened. He felt guilty. Every time he took a real break, no phone, no planning, no optimizing, a voice inside him spoke up. "You're wasting time. Your competition is working right now. You're falling behind." He recognized that voice. It was the voice Western culture had been injecting into him since childhood. Hustle culture. Sleep when you're dead. And the world around him confirmed it constantly. His friends lived by it. Social media celebrated it. Rest was laziness. Emptiness was waste. That voice was winning. Until he read the third teaching, Hara Hachi Bu, a principle from Okinawa, the island with one of the world's highest concentrations of people who live past 100. People in Okinawa stop eating when they are 80% full, not satisfied, not stuffed. 80%. Why? Because the body takes roughly 20 minutes to register fullness. By the time you feel full, you've already overeaten. You just don't know it yet. But Max wasn't reading for diet tips. What hit him was the note beneath the explanation. Hara Hachi Bu applies to everything. Work, training, focus. Never push to the limit, because whoever exhausts everything today has nothing left for tomorrow. Max went still. He had always operated at 100%, often 20%. Work until the limit, study until he couldn't absorb another word, exercise until his body gave out, and then wonder why he was perpetually exhausted. Hara Hachi Bu revealed something no productivity guru had ever said clearly. Sustainability isn't about giving everything every day. It's about giving enough so that tomorrow you still have something to give. And what modern neuroscience has since confirmed in laboratories, the Japanese already knew it centuries ago. Neuroscientist Matthew Walker documented across decades of research what hustle culture preferred to ignore. The human brain doesn't operate linearly, it runs in cycles. And the moments of apparent inactivity, rest, stillness, mental wandering, are biologically essential. That's when memory consolidates. That's when creativity ignites. That's when the most important decisions form. The mother Japanese practiced for 1,000 years. Neurologically, that's when the brain does its deepest work. A study published in the Journal of Occupational Health Psychology followed workers in Japanese companies that applied Hara Hachi Bu principles to their workday. Result: 34% fewer cases of burnout, sustained high performance over far longer periods than colleagues operating at their ceiling. Max read the data and felt something unfamiliar move through him. Relief, like someone had finally given him permission to be human. But there was a fourth teaching, and Max almost missed it entirely. Chapter 6, the lesson that changed everything. It was near the end of the book. The chapter was simply titled Shizen and Mono no Aware. Max almost skipped it. He already had more than enough to process, but something made him keep reading. And it was this chapter that broke him open completely. Shizen means naturalness, aligning your actions with your natural rhythms rather than forcing productivity against them. The Tao Te Ching says, "A wise man does not fight the river, he learns where it flows." The samurai studied natural cycles with the same seriousness they gave to sword technique. They understood there were moments of clarity and moments of fog, moments of strength and moments of depletion. And attempting to fight in the wrong moment wasn't discipline, it was foolishness. Max began to see it clearly. There were hours in his day when his mind was electric, creative, sharp, fast. And there were hours when every sentence came out wrong. Every decision felt murky. What had he done during those bad hours? He'd pushed harder, more coffee, more pressure, more self-criticism. Shizen said, "Stop fighting yourself." But it was Mono no Aware that finally brought Max to the floor of his apartment, sitting in silence, staring at nothing. Mono no Aware, loosely, the gentle melancholy of things, the bittersweet awareness of impermanence. The feeling that arises when you truly understand that each moment is precious precisely because it will end. Cherry blossoms, the sakura, are Japan's ultimate symbol of this. The Japanese don't celebrate them despite their brief bloom. They celebrate them because of it. The beauty is inseparable from the impermanence. The book ended with a sentence Max underlined 3 times. The man who doesn't realize time is passing never learns to value it. The man who realizes too much is paralyzed by anxiety. The wise man realizes bows before it and lives with tranquil urgency, not the frantic, white-knuckled urgency Max had always known, the kind that burned his eyes at 2 a.m., but an urgency born of love. Love for this moment, this specific, irreplaceable now, which exists today and will not exist the same way tomorrow. It wasn't about doing more. It was about being fully present in what you do. It wasn't about controlling time. It was about inhabiting it. Chapter 7. What changed in the months that followed? Max made small changes. Not dramatic, not revolutionary. Small. He added more to his schedule, intentionally blank spaces that no task was allowed to fill. Not to recharge for more work, simply to exist. He began practicing Ichigo Ichie, especially with his mother, who called every week, and whom he'd always half listened to while his eyes stayed on the screen. He started stopping everything when she called. Truly listening. In one of those conversations, she told him a story from his childhood he'd never heard before. He laughed until his sides hurt. He adopted Hara Hachi Bu at work, stepping away when he still had 80% energy left, and discovered something almost impossible the next day. He arrived with more creativity, more focus, more genuine enthusiasm than he'd ever had after working himself to collapse. He stopped fighting his natural rhythms, started noticing when his mind was in flow, and when it wasn't, and in the low moments, instead of forcing, he walked. He rested. He let silence be silence. And mono no aware, that was the hardest. It asked him to look at things he'd been avoiding. The years passing, his father getting older, the weight each visit now carried. But when he finally stopped running from that truth, when he embraced it not as depression but as reality, something shifted. He started showing up in his own life, not as a manager optimizing processes, but as someone who understood deep in his chest that this moment, this specific breathing, unrepeatable now, would not come back. And that made everything worth being present for. Chapter 8. What this means for you. Let's bring it all together, because each of these teachings carries a different kind of weight. The interval, the pause, reminds us that emptiness isn't the absence of something, it's a presence of its own. A schedule with no isn't productivity, it's noise dressed up as music. Ichigo Ichie, this moment, which will never happen again, challenges us to step off autopilot and treat each experience for what it truly is: singular, unrepeatable, and quietly precious. Hara Hachi Bu, the wisdom of 80%, frees us from the tyranny of exhaustion as a badge of worth. You are not more valuable because you're more tired. You are more powerful when you preserve what you have. Shizen, flowing with nature, invites us to stop warring against ourselves, to observe our rhythms, to work with our cycles, not against them. And mono no aware, the beauty of impermanence, gives us the rarest gift: urgency without anxiety. The recognition that time passes, that each moment is unique, and that this is not a threat, it's an invitation. Max's problem was never a shortage of time. It was that he was never truly inside the time he had. And maybe, if you're sitting with something heavy in your chest as you hear this, maybe that's your problem too. Not a lack of time, not a lack of discipline, not a lack of planning, a lack of presence, a lack of a lack of Ichigo Ichie, a lack of the quiet wisdom to know when to stop, when to slow down, when to simply be. The samurai, with all their battles, their codes, their impossible responsibilities, understood something it takes most of us a lifetime to learn. You cannot own time, but you can learn to inhabit it. And inhabiting time, truly inhabiting it, begins with a choice you can make right now, in this exact moment. The choice to stop running from the present toward a future that, when it arrives, you'll also want to escape. The choice to be here, completely here. The man who rushes through every moment of his life reaches the end without having lived any of them. Zen teaching. So before you close this, one honest question: how many moments today were you truly present? Not just physically there, but within, fully here, with me between your thoughts and Ichigo Ichie in your heart. If the answer is few or none, then that's exactly where you begin. Not tomorrow, not Monday, not when life gets quieter. Now, if this reached something in you, if at any point you thought that's exactly how I feel, then subscribe, turn on notifications, and tell me in the comments which teaching hit you hardest. Was it Ichigo Ichie, Hara Hachi Bu? Tell me below. I read every single one, and if you're ready to go deeper, the next video is already waiting for you on screen. Until then, remember, time is not your enemy, it is your teacher. The only question is how you choose to learn.